So, what is the true meaning of a World Expo? Is it only a stage to show off technology, or can it be something more? In 1970, Osaka hosted the expo at the peak of Japan's economy. The nation was full of optimism. Science and technology promised happiness. In 2025, the expo returned to Osaka, but the world is different. The expo became a place not to ask what can we do, but how shall we live? In Japanese culture, life exists not only in animals, but also in trees, stones, even the object we use. A tree grows from the soil, becomes a chair, and returns to the earth. This is not an ending, but a transformation. Our pavilion embraced this idea in a circular exhibition plan with no dead end, no matter which entrance you use. The pavilion is built from reusable cross-laminated timber. After the expo, each panel will live on across Japan as benches, bus stops, shelters, even new buildings. The pavilion transforms just like life itself. The Japan Pavilion at the 1970 Expo was a white box design. Even in 2025, most exhibition happens as surface in a universal box. In this Japan Pavilion, the closed exhibition room is opened up. The pavilion becomes the exhibition, not a white box, but a living experience. The journey has no dead ends. Visitors walk along circular paths through spaces that change the scale, sound, and light. The CLT elements were made large to be easily reused. Pairs of panels make up the exterior and interior and provide the earthquake resistance. The CLT is used with minimal processing. Everything else is made of steel. The gaps between the CLT units are filled with glass all the way to the roof. The glass is attached directly to grooves in the CLT. Very simple construction method, minimizing the clearances through structural analysis, avoiding unnecessary material. Sunlight enters in the exhibition through the transparent gaps. We created an exhibition experience where natural light, wind, and three-dimensional sightlines intersect. A low-ceiling room where light enters softly through timbers like sunshine through leaves. A tall hall echoing like a chapel where quiet light shifts the view of art. The environment changes with the time of day, but because there are gaps in all directions, light is always shining into some of the rooms. Rooms appear differently with each crowd, each hour, each season. In the dark exhibition room, the CLT emerges as your eyes adjust. Inside, you will find a space where you can encounter photosynthesizing algae. At the very center stands a courtyard of water. In Japanese spirit, an empty center is not a void. It is a place of reflection. Morning sun, afternoon clouds, evening rain. Each moment changes sound, water, light, and the face of wooden walls. Visitors feel themselves part of nature's great cycle. And this water carries a story. It is made from food waste collected at expo restaurants. We collect the food waste and through a biogas plant, waste become clean water, electricity, fertilizer, and CO2 to feed the algae. Guests can see this process and even taste it, receiving miso soup made from algae. They become part of the cycle. This biogas plant is located on the first floor, and the exhibition is lifted to the second floor. A gentle slope circles the pavilion, so that everyone can share the same path, same discoveries. No one is excluded. No one is separated. The gentle slope at the entrance, like a trail in a forest. A veranda-like space, sometimes narrowing, sometimes widening. A path with mystery. The scale and scene changes with every step. This rich interior and exterior environment is created by a very simple circular tree-like layout. Exhibition and architecture change with the time, weather, and the seasons, offering new discoveries and new perspectives with every step. Today, technology connects us instantly, yet society is fragmented. So what is the purpose of the expo? We think it is bring people together to share the scent of wood, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of footsteps, the beauty of changing skies. The expo reminds us, through our five senses, what it means to be human. The Japan Pavilion is not just a box of display. It is a living display of life. A pavilion that will continue to circulate, to live, and to connect us. Thank you.
Yeah, I start. I've been inside of your pavilion, and I have very strong question about this circular layout of your pavilion, because you have another circular building next to you, the Shine Hut by Toyo Ito. Then you have another big ring, like by So Fujimoto. So what was kind of a coordination or like a design process, like having this master plan? Because Toyo Ito the circular doesn't move. It's very quiet. But also, so Fujimoto is by the grid, also doesn't move. But your circular is having orientation, having kind of a movement. So that's why I was very curious about how you balance these three circular in the master plan.
At the time we started the design, all we had is the location of our plot. And there was the emerging idea of this massive ring in the center, but we have no clue what the others will be doing next to our plots. So that's a complete coincidence that other people doing something around next to us as well. Our desire was really to pick up on this idea of circularity, this being the theme of the whole expo and this being the host country's pavilion. We strongly felt that the pavilion should not just showcase that, it should actually embody this idea of circularity. So we did that quite literally in a circular layout to have the three chapters that form this exhibition, which was designing and emerging in concurrence with this building. So we had no fixed exhibition. The exhibition and the building was really designed in lockstep with one another, in response to one another. So we wanted to have, well, we said a separate entrance for each of those chapters, so you can come back and you can walk through those chapters in different sequences. The only common theme here is that you go through in a clockwise fashion for crowd control. We put the main entrance towards the ring because that's where most of the visitors will be coming from. And the others are turned into, on the master plan, look a bit like sub-entrances, but that's not the way it was set up. They're equal entrances. You can bring people in and out either way.
Maybe
I have a question.
Yeah,
How long
please.
does the expo last?
just finished.
6 months from April to mid-October, I think.
It's finished now.
Yeah, just last month.
It's over.
So unfortunately, it's a bit too late to go see the actual project. They started dismantling it already.
The expo has been, though, extremely popular, especially towards the end, where there were a lot of people visiting. It wasn't supposed to be that popular, but it became quite popular, I think, for the Japanese people to go. So it was a big event, especially towards the end. I have a question, but please, Peter, you go ahead. No. I think that it's a really interesting issue that you're raising, because I don't know, maybe most people know, but in some ways, Expo 1970 was the last expo that was about the future. And now there's, in a way, you can say there's no longer a future. It's just now. But then now, as you raise it, is about also a certain kind of reflection that you want. But the actual experience of the expo doesn't allow that to happen, because this expo, the way that it's run, every pavilion you have to wait to get in. The method of participating in the expo is counter to what you want, because you want the experience of moving through a place, reflection, understanding water, understanding sustainability, things like this. But in some ways, when you're waiting to get into one pavilion, to wait to get into another pavilion, to wait, just the process of how people are experiencing these things sometimes runs counter. So in a way, I think it works as a talk about it, but I'm wondering whether you feel there's a contradiction between the construction of the expo and the desire of the architect and the way that it's actually experienced in reality. Do those things go together for you? Did you feel that? Maybe it's just more like my personal question, but I'm curious about your thoughts about how the expo was experienced.
As someone who has spent lots of hours in some of those queues, yes, I would probably echo a lot of those sentiments. But I think that ties into, again, goes back to us, at least what we can do with this pavilion, for example, is arranging it in a way that people come back and have the same experience in a slightly different way, in a slightly different courtesy. And the queuing, for example, this pavilion was always a reservation system, except for the first hour in the morning when there was queues really that stretched maybe for an hour or so. But you're sort of gradually walking, you use this outermost ring actually to gradually sort of go in. You don't feel like you're still far away walking to something. You're already sort of going in. And you can, as you walk around, all these slits open up into and give you different views of what is actually inside. So you sort of, that's a slightly elevated, I think, experience of waiting as a result of the design of this pavilion.
Great. Let's see
for
what
example.
Peter has to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to pick up on your sort of historical cycle, or at least the fact that there's a mood, there's a change of mood, and then, but looking at the object, the first reaction I had, and I still stick to it, is that it reminded me of the sort of pavilion with slightly different detailing that you might have got in an expo in about 1920, where the architects would have been trained at the École des Beaux-Arts, quite possibly, and where the organization might well be sort of at least simpler circles. And when I looked at one of your plans, it reminded me of a 1920s building. And the shafts is something, in looking in history books of exhibition buildings, again, there was this sort of shaft, which is, let us face it, there's an overtone, if not more of an overtone, of monumentality. And then I started thinking, when you showed the interior insertions, and even if they're algae, etc., that is it the whimsical living within the monumental? And I think maybe there is an analogy between the change of mood and the mood that there might have been in and around maybe 1910, 1920s. And there were, there's a whole sort of compartmented history of the exhibition, of the expo, of the pavilion, of the pavilion that takes itself very seriously, even though interpretation is not particularly serious. And I'm reminded of that, despite the fact that its technology may be different.
There's several aspects that come to mind in response to that. Several things come to mind in response to that question. I would think if it reminds people of something, like you referenced the 1920s, one of the things I would say is that good things don't age. I think is not limited to this pavilion. We usually tend to aim for sort of a timeless elegance in this, which is difficult to do in a building that only exists for 6 months in the first place. So a lot of this was driven to find, I think probably all architects that do an expo pavilion would try to strike a right balance between, I wouldn't call it monumental, but something that says I'm here with pride of place and attracts people, because you are an attractress. You are effectively a circus sort of
but
arrangement.
That can very easily lurch
And
into pomposity, can't it?
I'm not sure that the pomposity would translate into any way in a Japanese really design approach. So, but that's probably a discussion that would take way too long than we have here. These panels step up, so the panels themselves are quite massive. Actually, the tallest ones are up to 12 meters tall. So that might be where there's a conscious wish to be in a place that sort of makes you go, wow, and feel really that you're in a very special place. But they step down gradually to the outside. So in that pavilion, I can't remember a place where we had any consciously selected to go towards that kind of impression, really. And there's a balance with the Hello Kitty exhibition used, because you also asked about the whimsical, actually. I think that's maybe closer to the truth, because then an expo pavilion caters to all sorts of age group and is ultimately trying to educate and to advocate something. So yes, there's a bit of spectacle, but this is a real biogas plant. This is real algae fed through this. If you switch the light off and the photosynthesis dies, actually it goes grey. So this is real in that sense. It's not a surface spectacle.
Thank you so much. Thank you.